If you've just gotten into Hearthstone or haven't bothered finishing the Knights of the Frozen Throne adventure, it's still not too late to beat the Lich King and get the Arthas hero skin. If you finish this video, you'll be able to beat the Lich King with all the classes, except for Demon Hunter, because even the game recognizes that class is an abomination to humanity. And you also don't need to beat him with Demon Hunter, that probably makes more sense actually. The Lich King has a start of game effect which is which will either restrict how you play the deck or give the Lich King a major advantage during the game. I'll go through each specific effect when we get to the decks, but what's common for each class is that you'll always go first, and on turn 7, the Lich King will always play Frostmourne. Since you always go first, you can sometimes play a card which will ruin the Lich King's start of game effect, and we're gonna abuse this to torture the Lich King. And also, since the Lich King always plays Frostmourne on turn 7, you need to know how to counter this. If you want the easiest way to win, you're gonna need to craft some old cards. Yes, I know, I'm sorry, but 500 Dust or Hero Skin, which one's better, okay? The two necessary ones you'll need are the Plate Breaker and Mossy Horror. The Plate Breaker is good because, duh, and the Mossy Horror is needed because it will get rid of the trap souls instantly when Frostmourne comes out. Speaking of when Frostmourne comes out, when it does come out, all of his minions on the board will be removed and resummoned after Frostmourne is removed. The Lich King won't be able to play any cards, but he will still draw them. He'll become immune and can deal 5 damage each turn with his weapon and 2 damage with however souls are left on the board. They'll also suicide and trade into your minions sometimes, so that's fun. Take out the souls when you see fit, because after Frostmourne is removed, the Lich King's hero power will become Remorseless Winter. From here, you're on a clock, so make sure you kill the Lich King fast. If you want to cheese out some games, but in reality it's not really cheese because it's totally necessary in some of the decks, but we'll get to that. You can use the card Vicious Fledgling. It's more dust, yes I know, but still, it makes everything so much easier. If you get Wind Fury on the first attack from the Discover, then you get Stealth on the second attack, you can start comboing its effect. Oh, it's just as stupid as I remember it. With all that out of the way, here's how you beat the Lich King, starting with Druid. The Druid starter game effect shares my disdain of little kids and destroys every minion that costs 3 or less, and this includes your deck, but not your opponent. Fair. Luckily for us, Spell Token Druid exists and it's kind of good right now. And since the Lich King's only board removal is Blizzard, you should be able to get the big board up. You can treat this matchup like any typical Token Druid game, play your minions, buff them, and when Frostmourne comes out, you can use your Mossy Horror for that easy removal, or in my case, forget them, put them in your deck so you don't actually have them. Okay, but seriously, put them in your deck, it makes everything so much easier, come on. Also, these decks are wild because you're allowed to use wild cards too. So I used the classic Token Druid card, Savage Roar, to tickle my nostalgia bone. That's a lie, I hate Druid. Hunter's starter game effect makes it so that you get 2 damage dealt for every minion in your deck, which wouldn't have been a problem back in 2017 where Spell Hunter existed, but we progressed backwards into minion-based Hunter decks. That means we're playing Secret Hunter with a few minions in there to get some consistent early game. Play your Secrets and Petting Zoo to maintain your board, and use Plate Breaker and Mossy Horror as your armor removal and finish. If you have any wild spells that aren't bad, feel free to put them in there. In fact, please do, because I beat the Lich King with 9 classes in 2 hours. This took up a quarter of that time. You also don't need the Grand Slam, but I like the name so I put it in there. I'm gonna be honest with you, this deck is the hardest deck to win with because there's no standard Spell Hunter support right now, but that means the rest of the decks are easy. Like this Spell Mage, which seems hard at first because it brings your health down to 0. But then you realize there's an old secret called Mana Bind which yoinks the same spell into your hand, and a 1 mana minion which makes your next secret cost 0. Yes, I know. That's another 140 dust that you're not gonna get back, and I didn't mention that at the start of the video too, so I guess we're all frauds here. But you can use Counterspell and play your own Temple Mage if you're really that poor. You impoverished little cream puff. In either case, a Plate Break will immediately win you the game, assuming you don't die, so just restart the game until you get the Cabal Lackey and Mana Bind Secret into your hand and you'll be set. Paladin is another one of those decks where you can just play a standard deck and you'll be set. For this one, the only cards you really need are Oh My Yogg and a decent Secret Paladin deck. The idea for this one is to play Oh My Yogg on turn 1, because if you don't, the Lich King will reveal his necrophile tendencies and take a minion that died on your board. Oh no, he's gonna do something to my dead minions! From there, it should be a simple game of Secret Paladin. The Lich King has just as much health as the average priest game, so don't worry. You don't really need Scale Breaker, but you probably need Mossy Horror. So if you've been putting both of those cards off, you could run Blessing of Authority and get some big boys in there. The only removal is Obliterate, that's big, so at worst you're dealing 8 damage to the Lich King, which is kinda bad now that I'm thinking about it. 5 mana deal 8, The Lich King does what everyone wants to do and neuters Priest. So play Control Priest and you're good. that's it. Just play regular control priest. What else do you want me to say, huh? Okay, fine. If you want some guidance, just control the board and use your insane value generation to make the computer somehow rage quit because someone is playing priest. You'll outvalue the Lich King if you get a good Seth deck on the board and try to combo with that. Also, Shadow Word Horror exists, so yay. Rogue and Shaman are the reasons you need to have Vicious Fledgling in your deck to make it a whole lot easier. We'll start the game with Rogue, where every spell you have is removed from your deck. Luckily, this also makes your deck slightly more consistent. Play your Murlocs like an aggro deck and hopefully get Plate Breaker on turn 5 so you can deal 30 damage before the Frostborn comes out. And if you need, use your Mossy Horror if you need a little bit of a finish at the end. Shaman has the exact same idea, except all the minions have an inferiority complex and are 1/1 in stats. The same idea applies, but the minions are afraid that they'll inconvenience the Lich King, so good luck. Still, with a good opening, this deck will work. Speaking of cheap decks, this deck is literally just every cheap and default Warlock card, but we're gonna call it Mid-Range Warlock. Way back in the day, a card named Reno Jackson existed, and this effect at the start of the game shows you how dated this expansion is. Another way this expansion is dated is because most modern cards are just the same power level as the Lich King cards. That means you can literally run this deck like you would any other mid-range deck, and you'll see success. Play for the wide board because the only board color is Blizzard, I think I already said that, and then use your Scale Breaker to deal 30 damage with a 5 mana card. But you know what's better than dealing 30 damage with a 5 mana card? Dealing 130 damage with a 5 mana card. You can do this because the Warrior started game effect has the Lich King gaining 100 armor. And speaking of how dated the Lich King deck is, a typical Rush Warrior deck is more than enough to win the game here. Just play it like you would play any other Rush Warrior game and you'll be set. But if you don't have any of those cards or can't make any other deck from this video, you should run the Murloc decks from the Shaman and Rogue matchups. You can also run other cards that are aggressive and make you happy, but you'll probably need Plate Breaker on turn 5 and some good openings to get a win. But maybe you want more standard decks to play. In that case, you should subscribe and check out this playlist right here. I make lots of fun Hearthstone videos here on YouTube, so I hope I see you there. Thanks for stopping by. I'll see you next time.